Okay, so we are live. For those listening at home, welcome to the Live from the Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and this is day 16 in the RPG A Day event for 2017. So this is, if you're joining us for the first time, this is a series of videos answering different questions for each day in August 2017 that deal with role-playing games, actually dealing with role-playing games, full stop, I suppose. So today's question is, which RPG do you enjoy using as is? Now, after yesterday's lengthy video about adapting games and whatnot, I really arrogantly thought like, well, there's never a game that I use just written as is. And I always end up adapting games to some degree or another. So I decided to go to my shelf and take a look and just walk around and see if there's which games I feel I maybe don't do that with. And actually, it was pretty easy to find one. And I can't believe I didn't think of this before. Unfortunately, I'm moving right now, so all my books or a good chunk of my books, I should say, are all packed up. So I can't do my usual visual aids thing right now because those are gone. But the game I'm thinking of is DC Adventures. It's the game. It's also 3rd edition Mutants and Masterminds. If sorry, you're unfamiliar with the game. DC Adventures was, well, let me back up. Mutants and Masterminds was a game that was published under the, it was written by Steve Kenson, and it was published by Green Ronin using the OGL, the open game license that came with D&D 3rd edition. There have been 3 editions of Mutants and Masterminds, and for my money, each version has been an improvement over the previous iteration. The 1st edition was a bit wonky, but it had there's a lot of fun stuff in it. It's a superhero role-playing game, very much like Champions or Marvel Superheroes or Heroes Unlimited or Villains and Vigilantes or whatever. And it's a point-buy system that uses the level system basically as a guide for power levels. It's how many points you get to build your superhero. And that's been true across all 3 editions. Before the 3rd edition of Mutants and Masterminds came out, actually, they obtained a license from DC Comics and released 4 books for that, no, 4 or 5 books, no, 4 books for that, or under that license that were specifically branded DC Adventures. And then they also released the 3rd edition Mutants Masterminds with a bunch of other supplemental material as well. I'm not going to go into the differences between the different editions. 2nd edition was a light year improvement over the 1st, and then I feel that the 3rd, I understand that there is some disagreement in the community as to whether 3rd was an improvement over or a sufficient improvement over 2nd to justify its existence, but I really like it. And yeah, and so the game, in addition to very easily emulating superpowers, like you really you can build almost anything you want using that game engine or the character creation mechanics. And the gameplay really just requires a D20. It doesn't use any other dice. The only dice you'll ever need is really, I mean, if you're playing, you only need 1 D20. You're never going to roll more than 1. The DM, or whatever they call it in the game, GM, I guess, the DM will require some more, in particular if you're using like minions or stuff like that, where you're going to be rolling lots of attacks against heroes. But I mean, like I say, for a player, you're really only going to need 1 D20, so it's pretty streamlined in that sense. It shares a lot of common ground with other point generation systems like Champions, where there are the most recent, I should say, the most recent edition of Champions does not include this, but previous editions of Champions used to include sort of power caps for different abilities that you could. Well, the power caps to avoid basically, people building glass cannon characters who just do a ton of damage from 1 attack but can't really do anything else. And the way that they do that in DC Heroes is a really inventive way of BIOS. So you have the average for everything is effectively whatever your power level is, and then you can dial up or dial down. So you can trade your effectiveness to do more damage. So, or rather, you can trade your accuracy to do more damage or a greater effect, or you could trade your armor, like how tough you are, for how hard you are to hit. So there's lots of inbuilt sort of trade-offs to dial up and dial down to customize the character the way you want. It incorporates also as a system of narrative points that they happen to call hero points. And they interact with an option called extra effort, where you can try and exert yourself past a certain point. And the hero points from that were really, 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 I don't want to say just great. The scope of things you could do with hero points in that game, including editing scenes and stuff like that, were really great. And for the time, really innovative, like really different from anything else I had seen in other games. At the time, I really wasn't that much into the Burning Wheel kind of indie narrative games. So it was a real innovation. And I've run that game since the core book came out. I'm not running it presently, but I go back to it every now and again. In particular, I really love running high-powered superheroes with it. It suits the DC universe really quite well because the game supports the kind of theater of the mind kind of imaginative play. It's easy to house rule stuff on the fly, or on the fly, I should say. It's very easy for people to grasp what the game is about in terms of playing superheroes. It's easy for people to for the system to sort of fade into the background, and the action points really help fill in those gaps where the mechanics sort of fall down. If you want to push your powers, or if you've got what's called actually I can't remember what it's called in DC Adventures. I think it's they just call it multiple powers, but it used to be called a multi-power in Champions, and that's how I always think of it. It's basically a set of sort of energy that you can dump into a bunch of different slots and do different things with that power. That's effectively what the multiple powers are, or optional powers. And one cool thing is if you've got a pool of powers like that, you can spend a hero point to stunt a new power, which is a very, very comic book thing to do. To try something using your power in a new way. And then if you choose, as you develop your character, to buy in and make that a permanent addition, all the more power to you. It's one of the few games too where I've never house ruled anything. I have not found the need to make any changes to the system whatsoever. I mean, largely it's because it plays so free and loose. But it's not like when I run Champions, I retrofit the hero points onto it because I think that really suits super heroic style play. And Champions as written does not have that kind of option. It's got a very limited, much lesser version, or much less versatile version of the hero point mechanics. Same thing with I'm trying to think, like if I run like Marvel Superheroes, I haven't run Marvel Superheroes in decades, so I that's not maybe a good example. But yeah, Mutants and Masterminds is just a really clean and efficient system that I never feel the need to make any modifications for. Champions is a close rival too, because the only thing I change in that is adding in the hero points. But both of those are extremely versatile systems as well too. It would be cheating to pick GURPS, for instance, as an option for this, because GURPS is just about adaptation. It happens to be a toolbox game, so you can build whatever you want. But I don't think it's a cheat to say that DC Adventures I run it as written. You can create your character. Unlike GURPS, you're not picking certain rules to apply and certain rules to not apply, or changing the way that certain of the mechanics work in order to better emulate a genre. DC Adventures, I always run straight out of the box. And to be honest, I always enjoy it too. It's a really, I don't know why I don't run that more often. I really need to think, why? Is because as soon as players start building invisible, intangible characters who can also shift their powers into super strength and shit like that, that's where my fun is ruined. When I make characters, Martian Manhunter and the Vision are terrific comic book characters. They make for really, really shitty PCs. Or maybe I'm just a bad DM for not being able to handle those PCs. But in any event, so that's my answer to that. I hadn't thought yesterday. I would have thought that I would not have been able to come up with an example, but I'm glad I had a chance to go back and take a look at the shelf. DC Adventures is a really terrific game that I thoroughly enjoy running completely as written, and I never have to fudge anything. It does its job extremely well for emulating the system or the setting that it's going for. I should say that there is, it's not to say that this is just nothing but glowing praise for the DC Adventures or Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition game. It does feel kind of swingy sometimes because of the use of the D20 rather than like 2D10s or something similar, to something that would provide a little more of a bell curve for results. It can be a little unpredictable, but with the hero point mechanic, that's one of the things that sort of blunts that crazy randomness. So yeah, that's actually one of the things. If you're not familiar with the game, one of the uses of hero points is to re-roll the dice, and then if you re-roll, if your re-roll is less than 10, you add 10 to the result. So it's great. Like your second roll, if you roll a shitty roll on something that's really important and you have the hero point to spend, you'll be guaranteed at least a decent chance of succeeding, a more than decent chance of succeeding, because your roll is never going to be less than 10. So anyway, that's my answer for today's question. I prefer using DC Adventures as written. Tomorrow's question is, which RPG have you owned the longest but not played? Oh, I think I packed that one. Damn it. Yeah, so I've got one. That'll be interesting. I know what my answer for that will be, and I may have, and I may have a reason for why that may remain my. It's not a white whale of mine in the sense that I've been wanting to run it for a long time. It's just I think I've come to realize that it's not. This particular game is just not going to be a good fit for what I actually want. It's not going to do what I've for years sort of dreamed of it doing. So, in any event, if you have, as always, any questions, comments, or concerns about what I'm talking about in this video, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the section below, and I will endeavor to respond. For those who responded so far throughout too, I really appreciate the feedback and the interaction I've had. This has been a really interesting experience and I've been thinking more about what I'm doing with my gaming and why I do the kind of gaming I do and why I enjoy the kind of gaming I do and why I don't enjoy certain other kinds. So this has been a really, really fun endeavor. So anyway, that's all for me for today. I hope the day is treating all of you well, and I will, whenever you're watching this, and I will hope to see you again tomorrow.